First, we of course are in touch with the Chinese and the Russians as we work to bring men and women out of Afghanistan, and including our SIV applicants and others. Our message is very clear. We stand by, as is outlined in the Taiwan Relations Agreement, by individuals in Taiwan. We stand by partners around the world who are subject to this kind of propaganda that Russia and China are projecting, and we're going to continue to deliver on those words with actions. Our objective in Afghanistan is to deliver also on what the president promised, which is to not put the men and women who have served our country bravely over the past 20 years in harm's way again, and that's what we'll also be projecting to them as well.
Jen, why was August better than, say, November or December to be getting out?
In terms of the August 31st timeline?
Correct, because this is the Taliban fighting season, and that would not be.
I know there's been a fair amount of focus on that, but I wouldn't say that that has been an assessment of a difference here in terms of what our timeline would have been from the beginning.
So there's no belief that it would have been any different in December than it is in August?
I don't believe that military officials have made that assessment.
As we ask about the risk assessment right now, what is the current risk assessment in terms of terrorism and the potential threat that exists within Afghanistan against the United States?
Well, I think as the president conveyed yesterday and also conveyed back in May, part of our objective here was to make sure we had the resources to fight the counterterrorism threat that has changed over the last 20 years, wherever it is. And that has not been emanating from Afghanistan in the way that it was 2 decades ago, which is understandable. We have a range of capacities, over the horizon capacities, as well as capacities where we do effective counterterrorism operations in countries where we have absolutely no presence in any way at all. We will continue to watch closely, continue to assess, but I'm not in a position, I'll leave that to our intelligence community to provide an update on. Go ahead.
You said just a little bit ago that if the Taliban does not agree to these safe passage agreements or conversations, that the consequence will be the full force and weight of the U.S. military. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean there's a scenario where we go back in?
That means that we have been clear, and I think my colleagues at the Defense Department have also conveyed this, that we have our own capacity, military capacity from here. Obviously, we have worked with them to ensure safe passage. That's where our objective is. I'm not going to outline or detail it further.
You said, the administration said that the evacuation efforts were stalled in part because some Afghans did not want to leave earlier, they wanted to stay. Mm-hmm. Do you have any specifics on this population? Exactly how many Afghan allies are we talking about who were eligible to leave but chose to remain?
It's a good question. I can see if I can give you a greater assessment of that. What I can tell you is that of the initial numbers of SIV applicants that were granted visas, there was a good chunk of that number who did not take advantage of those visas and depart. Now, that does not change our commitment. That does not change our obligation, but it's just an important component of the story of the last 6 months. Go ahead.
11,000 you mentioned, just for clarity, those are 11,000 self-identified people in the country not who want to leave. Do you have any indication how many Americans are still trying to get out of Afghanistan?
I can see if there's a greater assessment. I would point you to the State Department on that, though. They'd have the most up-to-date numbers.
Do you have a total number of people overall, including third country nationals and Afghan nationals, who you want to get out over the coming days?
Again, there are a number of prioritized programs. I think we've given out some numbers in terms of, if you look at SIV applicants, we have about 22,000 spots at military bases here, an additional 8,000 in third countries. Obviously, we're going to work to assess and make sure we get, and we work to get as many people out as possible who are eligible for those programs, as well as, of course, separately, American citizens. But I don't have a number or an update for you on the total.
Sorry, I know they're going to announce this tomorrow, but are we talking about booster shots for everyone? And if so, why should healthy young Americans be getting a third shot when so many in the world don't have a first shot yet?
Well, they will provide a briefing tomorrow on what the recommendations are, and I encourage you to ask a question, as I'm sure you will ask a question at their briefing, Josh, as you've been following this closely. I'm not going to get ahead of their announcement or the president addressing this tomorrow, but I will tell you that we believe that that is a false choice. We can do both, and the United States is far and away the biggest contributor to the global supply, the global fight against COVID. We will continue to be the arsenal for vaccines around the world. We also have enough supply, and we have long planned for enough supply should a booster be needed for the eligible population. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. The National Security Advisor said when a civil war comes to an end with an opposing force marching on the ground, there's going to be scenes of chaos. There's going to be lots of people leaving the country. But my question is, why didn't you have a better plan to secure the airport? How could you not anticipate crowds of people rushing the tarmac, and overwhelming limited security if there was a contingency plan in place?
Well, first I'd note something that Jake Sullivan said and John Kirby said, which is, and I'll probably butcher their iteration of it, but basically the best laid plans require adjustment when you get on the ground and see what the situation on the ground is. We have secured the airport in a short period of time. There were initial scenes of chaos, but that has been a priority, and we have accomplished that task. Now our focus is on getting planes in and getting American citizens, SIV applicants, our locally employed staff, some of your colleagues out of the country. But we did effectively do that thanks to the hard work of the men and women on the ground from the State Department and the Defense Department over the last 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Oh, I called on Isha, so let me do one more.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. I want to follow up. Jake said that the president had not spoken to any other world leaders yet. Why is that?
Jake also said that our focus right now has been on operational efforts, which includes coordination at a lower level than leaders and heads of state. And that is our focus on working with third countries to help get their citizens out, or of course working with others on the ground to get vulnerable populations out. That's where the focus is at hand right now. And if there is a benefit in the president picking up the phone and calling world leader, he will certainly do that, and I expect he will do that in the coming days. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.